UFC 303 Pereira vs Prochazka has now wrapped up, and we're going to go through the card fully together. This is the full card recap, and we're also going to go through my overall UFC 303 prediction results. So these are the results for the prelims and for the main card. As you can see, we went 6-2 on the prelims, and we went 1-4 on the main card. Obviously an atrocious main card result, but it is what it is sometimes. Can't get every single one correct. I did go with quite a few underdogs on this card. I was pretty happy with the prelim results though, overall. We're going to go through the whole card. I'm actually pretty excited. So I want to start with the main card again. And not only are we starting with the main card, we're starting with the main event, which was Alex Pereira KOing Jiri Prochazka in the second round. As a fan, I was a fan of both, so it was crazy. I literally hate seeing every second on my timeline just Jiri Prochazka getting KO'd out cold. It's just devastating as a fan of Jiri, not just because I picked him, but just because I really do like Jiri. I really do like Pereira as well, so fantastic win from him. I'm taking nothing away from him at all. He was just the better fighter. I knew before the fight that he was going to be the more technical fighter, but I thought with so many different factors, the factor of Pereira staying in Australia, doing all these meet and greets, I thought that he wouldn't be training as much, he would look slower, Jiri could take advantage just like he did in the first fight. Jiri looked like he was in a lot more control in the first fight, looked a lot better, obviously besides the leg kicks of Pereira and the last exchange in that fight. And I just thought he could get more done, but Pereira really did shut him down the entire fight. I don't think Jiri had one decent exchange the entire fight. I think one big change that not a lot of people are talking about overall in this fight is also that I saw Pereira jab a lot more, harder jabs, especially to Jiri's head, to his body as well. He was still chucking a lot of leg kicks, but I think he was chucking a lot less leg kicks, and he was just sticking him with more jabs, conditioning him with jabs to the body, getting him to lower his hands a lot more. That ended up setting up the head kick for him and just more left hooks upstairs. It doesn't really help when Jiri comes in rushing in with his hands lower as well, which was pretty disappointing to see, especially since he got caught by the left hook and the right hand in the last fight. You would have thought that he would have adjusted a little bit better, but it is what it is. We can't take it away from Pereira. He looked fantastic. I honestly would like to see him move up. I do think I would favor him in the fight with Ankalaev as well, but I just don't think with Ankalaev's willingness to sit out and his wanting to call the shots, like saying come to Abu Dhabi to fight, or he seems to want like some sort of hometown advantage when he fights. I would like to see him realistically fight Aspinall. Hopefully Aspinall beats Curtis Blades, and then I'm assuming that John Jones will relinquish the belt and retire after the Stipe fight. So yeah, I would like to see Pereira versus Aspinall next. As what's next for Jiri, a lot of time off. I need him to recover. I can't have him jumping back in straight away. Took a lot of damage. It was a really bad KO. Definitely a little bit of a late stoppage. They didn't really want to hear any of that early stoppage mess like they did last time, so they let him pretty much die on the ground, which was pretty sad. But yeah, plenty of time off. I think maybe he can verse Jamal Hill next in his comeback fight sometime later this year potentially, or next year, as long as of a recovery he needs. Or Ankalaev can verse one of them, Jamal Hill or Jiri Prochazka, depending on what time they're willing to come back. Anyway, that's it for the main event. We can move down the card. Diego Lopez gets the win over Dan Ige. I did put a prediction in. I wrote in a comment of my previous prediction video that I think that Diego Lopez would win this fight anyway. It was a way harder matchup for him stylistically than Brian Ortega, so I was very concerned for him going into this fight. Literal 2 hours notice. Dan Ige deserves all the respect in the world, and Diego Lopez deserves all the respect in the world for taking this fight as well. I think he weighed in at 146 the night before. Then Ortega said he wasn't going to make 145. He re-weighed in at 155. And then after he pulled out, Dan Ige weighed in at 165. And then Diego Lopez weighed in at 161. So he had 2 extra weigh-ins after his initial weigh-in, which is insane. Respect to these guys. Great fight to watch. I think the co-main and main event were definitely the best fights of the main card. I thought the other 3 fights were a little bit lackluster. The women's fight was actually not bad, but it did end lackluster just because it was finished with a doctor stoppage because of a cut. But yeah, great fight. Dan Ige hard to finish. Diego Lopez was gassing out towards the last round and Dan Ige took over, but he did win the first and second round. So great win by Diego Lopez. I think they might be doing a rematch sometime at the Sphere, as far as what Dana White said, but I'm not sure if they're doing a rematch or if they're just both fighting on that card in particular, but would love to see them fight in the near future. It would be great to see them both have a full training camp where they train for one another as well. We're moving on to the next fight, which is Roman Dolidze gets a win over Anthony Smith. Man, I don't even know what to say about this fight. This was pretty rough to watch. I think this fight and Ian Garry versus MVP were pretty bad. Just as a fan and from the fan experience to watch these sort of fights, Anthony looked really slow. Like, he looked fast against Khalil Roundtree when he versed him, and in this fight, he just looked crazy slow. I don't know what was going on. He made Roman Dolidze look really good in this fight, and you're ranked in light heavyweight, and you're losing to a middleweight moving up. I know that in the lower weight classes that they usually have more skill overall, they're more technical, and when they're moving up, they do have quite a bit of success, but I really thought Anthony Smith would have his number in the stand-up. I don't know, it was just a disappointing showing from them. I thought it wasn't the most exciting fight. Not really much to say about this. Dolidze really just shut him down the entire fight. Not the best. We move on. Macy Chiasson gets a second round technical KO versus Mayra Bueno Silva. One of the more fun fights on the main card. This fight was looking good. I think Mayra Bueno Silva was looking really good in the first round, but then just a cut opened up, and it was pretty much all over from there. The cut was really deep. It did look terrible. I was saying in the moment I didn't want them to stop. I did pick Mayra Bueno Silva to win, so I was a bit annoyed when they were pressing her, especially since she looked like she wanted to continue as well. But the cut did look pretty bad. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Definitely looked deep enough to warrant a stoppage. I'm not super disappointed in the decision that they made, but obviously I'm not happy that I didn't get the pick right. But anyways, we move on. Not much to say about this. It did get stopped in the second round. Now we can talk about Ian Garry versus MVP. This fight was boring. I'm not going to lie to you. It was pretty boring, and I think I do blame Ian Garry quite a lot for making this boring. MVP managed to clip Ian Garry quite a few times, and Ian Garry's chin actually held up really well. He didn't get rocked a single time, I don't think. But as soon as he landed on Ian Garry, he just straight turned into a grappler in this fight. Obviously, I'm not disappointed if there's grappling. It is MMA. He was talking a lot before the fight about how he was saying that MVP wouldn't be able to handle his striking, that he's never versed a striker like him. As soon as he felt MVP's strikes, he just turned into a grappler, so it was a little bit disappointing in that way. I would have liked to see more of a striking battle. And I also don't think this was a robbery either. I think I saw a lot of people talking about this was a robbery, but I gave the first and third rounds to Ian Garry. I just don't think MVP did enough in the third round especially. I thought first round was clear Garry. Second round was clear MVP. At least one of the two starting rounds went to either fighter, whichever one. And then the third round went to Garry, so he should win 29-28. Yeah, boring fight. Pretty lackluster. Disappointed. But it is what it is sometimes. Ian Garry's moving up. He's not going to build a big fan base with that type of fight. Obviously, his fighting style is a bit more safe. I would honestly like to see him versus Colby Covington next. Like, he should have been fighting Colby Covington in the first place, I think. So I would like to see him versing Colby Covington next. And then I would have to look to see who I want MVP to fight. But yeah, let's move on. Joe Pyfer knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault. I think this was one of the more locks of the card, if anything. Joe Pyfer, crazy strong, crazy powerful, a little too explosive for someone like Marc-Andre Barriault, and he just looked massive in there. The first big right hand that landed through the guard just wobbled him, and then he chased him down and finished him pretty ruthlessly. Great finish. Fantastic comeback from Joe Pyfer after his loss to Jack Hermanson. I would like to see Pyfer versus someone in the top 15 or just outside of the top 15 next. So we'll have to decide to see who he's going to verse next. But yeah, great win. Hopefully Barriault recovers sometime soon. Hate seeing dudes get knocked out like that, but it is good for the fans, of course. Crazy finish once again. We move on. Andre Fili gets the decision win over Cub Swanson. Honestly, this was a close fight. I thought this could go either way. I think I was slightly leaning towards Cub when I watched it live, but Andre was doing good. He did secure a couple of takedowns. He was initiating more clinches. He just looked bigger and stronger out there overall. And Cub was really starting to track him down more in the second and third in this fight. And I thought he was having a good amount of success catching Fili, but Fili was catching him with quite a few counter shots when he was going into engage, so they were quite even in this fight. So I wouldn't say this was necessarily a big robbery, but I would say I was leaning towards Cub Swanson. I'm happy with Andre Fili getting the win, especially since it was a channel pick though, but you always want to see the right dude get the win. But yeah, good fight overall on the card. Not much else to say. Gene Silva KOs Charles Jourdain. This was a crazy one. Gene Silva looked fantastic. I honestly thought Jourdain would look a little bit better on the feet. He did look quite good, but Gene Silva was just pressuring him very well. Very, very well. I was very impressed. I thought that Gene Silva would have to do more grappling in this fight. I thought Charles would have more success on the feet. But Gene Silva was the one that was catching him. He caught him in the first, and then obviously caught him in the second when he finished him. And it was Jourdain that went for more wrestling exchanges. It was a nasty uppercut finish for Gene Silva. He seems like a funny dude as well. Good energy, deserves the win, and I'm happy I got another pick right for the card. This guy seems dangerous. Watch out for this guy. We move on to the next fight of the card. Payton Talbott gets the KO win over Yanis Ghemmouri. Listen, I'm happy he made a statement here, but this was a step down in competition for Payton, and this was right after his Cameron Simon win, who I think is just levels above Yanis Ghemmouri. So I don't really know what they were doing with the setup into this fight, but I will say this. He was expected to finish him, and he was expected to dominate him, and he did just that. So great job from Payton Talbott. And I also think the ref should have stepped in right after the right hand landed. Like, you could honestly see Yanis was completely out of it. He really didn't need to get flatlined into the canvas after that shot. Obviously not Payton's fault. He did give the ref a chance. This is more of a reffing mistake, but yeah, hate to see dudes take extra damage for sure. Great win from Payton Talbott. We can move on. Gillian Robertson dominates Michelle Waterson-Gomez. This was a complete shutout. One of the more dominating fights on this card. I thought she would have got a finish, honestly. It's not like she didn't try. Many rough ground and pound moments throughout this fight, and a few solid submission attempts that didn't get finished. And with Michelle Waterson-Gomez, I'm happy she decided to call it a career at this point. No need to continue. At her age especially, I'm happy they gave her flowers at the end as well. It's always nice to see a fighter get a montage of their career and to give them a moment on the mic. Love it when they do that for retiring fighters. Great win from Robertson. Happy to see a nice retirement as well for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. We move on. Martin Buday versus Andre Arlovski. By far one of the most boring fights I think I've ever watched. I don't even know what to call this fight. It was like a sparring match almost. It was also like they had a conversation like Arlovski was saying to Martin Buday, would you like to have a hug during this fight? And Martin Buday was like, sure thing, how long do you want to hug for, man? And then on Arlovski's like, 10 minutes at the very least, but let's shoot for 15 minutes. They literally clinched up for almost the entire fight. It was a terrible fight for the fans. I said in my prediction this would most likely be a boring one as well, but I didn't think it'd be this bad, honestly. Buday wins, and I picked him, so I'll take it, but who's going to be excited to see these guys fight again? We're moving on. Tsuruya versus Carlos Hernandez. I did go with the underdog in Carlos Hernandez here, and he actually didn't look that bad in this fight. I just thought that he might be able to do a little bit more, might be able to stuff the takedowns of Tsuruya, but Tsuruya proved himself against a UFC caliber fighter. Very impressive win from him. Crazy dominant in the grappling exchanges, and was always looking to transition into something different to find the submission. Both guys were scrambling, but Ray was clearly leading the dance in every exchange, except for the hip toss mistake at the start of the third round where Hernandez landed on top, but that was literally the only exchange where it didn't go his way. Great performance, and I'm looking out for him in the near future. Moving on to the last fight of the card, which was also the first opening fight of the card. Vinicius Oliveira gets the win over Ricky Simone. After this fight, I saw some people think if this should go towards Ricky, and I'm going to say I do believe this fight was closer than the UFC stats were leading on. I've learned not to trust the UFC stats or the live odds after watching MMA for a long time. They are wrong a decent amount of time. That's just my opinion, of course. But I do think Vinicius won this fight pretty clearly as well. I think that Ricky Simone definitely got shut out in this fight quite a bit. I think Vinicius Oliveira's takedown defense looked a lot better. He was able to stuff a lot of Ricky Simone's takedowns, but Ricky was shooting in pretty undisguised. He was shooting a lot of bad takedowns, in my opinion. Just ones without any setup, allowing Vinicius to see them coming. Vinicius looked quite solid on the feet as well. Was piecing him up quite good too. Besides that check leg kick, I think the whole fight was going towards Vinicius Oliveira, in my opinion. I think Ricky Simone just didn't have enough output, and I thought he would have had more in this fight too. But yeah, great win from Vinicius Oliveira. That's it for the card recap, guys. If you like the recap, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, or just leave a comment below about your thoughts on the card. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.